This is a small island, but this is the wealthiest country in the world right now by GDP per capita exceeding $150,000.
Singapore was not always this rich. Just a few years back, that is in 1950s, it was dealing with
extreme poverty, unemployment, overpopulation, high crime rates, drug-related problems, and people didn't have food to eat, and there weren't any natural resources in the land.
So, how did this nation reach this number?
Until 1959, Singapore was ruled by the British colonial government.
After World War II, Britain was economically exhausted and realized that handing power to a strong local government was safer than trying to hold Singapore by force.
In 1959, internal self-government was granted to Singapore. However, British retained control over defense, foreign affairs, and internal security until 1967.
The first real election of Singapore was held in 1959. Out of 51 seats, People's Action Party, that is PAP, won 43 seats and Lee Kuan Yew became the Prime Minister of Singapore. And Lee Kuan Yew had many challenges to deal with.
Singapore's port was home for many illegal activities and Singapore had no military or defense power of its own. Britain was the one that was controlling defense and foreign affairs.
For Singapore, British presence was necessary in order to keep countries safe from external threats and to provide stability until basic infrastructure was established.
However, British slowly began withdrawing from Singapore because maintaining colonies had become too costly and unsustainable.
To ensure security and survival, Singapore decided to join Malaysia. Initially, Malaysia denied it, but later agreed and Singapore joined Malaysia in 1963. But due to serious political, economic and racial tension, Malaysia decided that Singapore should leave the Federation. Lee Kuan Yew announced this on television and broke down emotionally. So this was not acting. He genuinely feared that Singapore might not survive. But however, Singapore became an independent republic on 9th August 1965 and from here on Singapore did not turn back. Let's understand very clearly what were the strategic steps that were taken by Singapore that supported its rapid growth. Singapore was in extremely tough condition.
People had no shelter, food, and they lived in slums.
So in this environment, it was important to give some basic shelter to people and to change the mindset of people. So Lee Kuan Yew started Housing and Development Board in 1960,
through which it built massive number of public houses for the poorest and most vulnerable people in Singapore.
So Lee Kuan Yew understood one brutal truth: without jobs, nothing else matters. You cannot talk about democracy, identity, or long-term vision when people are unemployed, angry, and hungry. So in 1961, Singapore created Economic Development Board, and its sole purpose was economic survival through industrialization and foreign investment. So Lee Kuan Yew and his team were willing to bet the country's future on one concentrated industrial push rather than thinly spreading resources everywhere. The EDB's first major action was bold and risky, that is developing Jurong Industrial Estate.
Jurong was mostly swamp, mangroves and low-lying land in Singapore's far west.
Considered so unattractive that people joked it would only ever house crocodiles. But that was the base of Singapore's development. So the very first industry to set up in Jurong Industrial Estate was a Singapore-based steel works called National Iron and Steel Mill, or later simply known as Nat Steel. So before, Singapore was importing finished steel bars and rods from other countries, which was actually necessary for a massive public housing and infrastructure push. But that would cost too much. But then it changed its strategy.
It started to import scrap metal and iron ore from nearby countries like Malaysia, Indonesia and Australia. Because Singapore was already a busy port, bringing in raw materials by sea was cheap and reliable. Jurong Industrial Estate was located close to the port, so inputs could come inside the steel mill easily.
So using this raw material, Singapore manufactured a steel bar and rod in its own country. So how did this help Singapore? Before, foreign companies made the product and foreign workers earned the wage and foreign companies kept the profit and Singapore only consumed. But after setting up industries in Jurong by making steel locally, Singapore saved foreign manufacturing margin and saved shipping on finished goods and kept the value-added part inside the Singapore.
Workers in Singapore were paid wages to process it, and those workers spent their wages locally, and that supported shops, transport services and taxes. So even if the steel was used only inside Singapore, the country gained jobs, skills, industrial experience, and tax revenue.
This improves the economy even without exports. Once the steel mill and basic factories proved that Jurong could work, the next step was diversification of manufacturing in mid-1960s. First came simple labor-intensive industries.
Textile and garment factories, wood products, rubber goods, and food processing.
These required low skills, but it attracted large number of unemployed people quickly. Employment rose, which reduced social tension and proved to foreign investors that Singapore could run factories reliably.
After the steel mill and early labor-intensive factories,
Singapore faced a new problem by mid-1960s. The domestic market was tiny and Singapore had only few million people. Once the basic needs were met, factories could not grow further by selling only inside the country. So if they stayed inward looking, they would stagnate. So the government decided that they should focus on export.
they invited foreign companies to set up their business in Singapore. They did not just invite, but they set up complete infrastructure, where land was already prepared in Jurong with roads, power, water, and port access.
Singapore's PM Lee had released many offers, like they made many industries tax-free and many industries were given tax holiday. That means they do not have to think about tax for few years. They could come here and set up their companies and employ Singapore citizens. And labor laws were made which did not exist anywhere else in the world. These laws were in complete favor of the companies. The companies had the most control of Singaporean labor. Since people were immersed in poverty, they did not back out from doing labor.
And Lee held back-to-back meeting with USA, Japan, Hong Kong, Taiwan, Malaysia, Australia, and European companies and gets them to agree and set up companies in Singapore. Within 2 years, more than 150 companies were set up in Singapore and more than 32,000 jobs were created. Even after this, they started setting up big oil refining industries and did it in this way that Singapore became world's third oil refining center.
Now, while the year 1970 arrives, they achieved what Lee wanted until 1970s. None of the people were left unemployed. In fact, so many jobs were created that they had to call people from outside. After this, Singapore's growth was rapid.
It became an international financial center, global trade and shipping hub. Thousands of multinational companies placed their Asia-Pacific headquarters in Singapore. It moved far beyond simple labor-intensive work into electronics, semiconductors, chemicals, pharmaceuticals, biomedical science, and precision engineering. And it became a wealth management and private banking hub. Rich individuals and family businesses across Asia keep and manage their money in Singapore because of legal protection, confidentiality, and stability.
You know what are some important things that helped in Singapore's growth? Singapore is one of the world's least corrupt country. You know what trick did Lee Kuan Yew used to end corruption? He raised salaries of government employees and also salaries of ministers and politicians. They were paid such high salaries, you won't believe it. The current Prime Minister of Singapore, that is Lawrence Wong, is one of the highest paid Prime Minister in the entire world. So his current salary is $2.2 million. So the logic for this is if you pay good salaries to government employees, the chances of them engaging in corruption is less. Even with this high salary, if the government employees engage in corruption, then they're given heavy punishment.
In 1960, PAP introduced the Prevention of Corruption Act. The Corrupt Practices Investigation Bureau was given more powers and no political leaders can interfere in it. This allows this agency to remain independent.
Singapore is one of the cleanest countries in the world.
Singapore had slums all over the place. More than 26,000 families were relocated from slums to public housing. As of 2025, about 80% of people in Singapore live in public housing. It means homes provided by the government.
This is why there is next to no homelessness in the country. Whatever Singapore is today, its main pillar is Lee Kuan Yew. So Singapore is the product of great leader working together with his people.